What if the most infamous serial killer in American history has been hiding in plain sight, their identity kept secret for over 50 years? What if every clue, every cryptic message, every grisly murder had been a meticulously crafted game? A game that the Zodiac Killer played with law enforcement and the public. In this story, we're about to expose shocking new details that could finally reveal the killer's true identity. But be warned, the truth may be more chilling than you ever imagined. Please, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe and comment for more haunting tales. Your clicks help us uncover the darkness, one story at a time. It was the late 1960s, a time of societal upheaval and unrest, when fear began to grip the streets of Northern California. The Zodiac Killer, as the media dubbed him, first appeared in the public consciousness in 1968, with a brutal double murder near the shores of Lake Herman Road, in a secluded area outside of Vallejo, California. The killer's first victims, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, were two teenagers parked in a car when the Zodiac approached them, shooting them both in cold blood. The police had no leads, no suspect, and no motive. But the first crime was only the beginning. Over the next several years, the Zodiac would claim more victims, each killing more brazen than the last. But what set this killer apart from the others was not just the brutality of the murders. It was the cryptic letters he sent to local newspapers. Letters that taunted police, mocked their lack of progress, and detailed his crimes with a chilling, almost gleeful precision. For years, investigators and citizens alike speculated on the identity of the Zodiac. But despite countless theories, sketches, and investigations, the killer's identity remained unknown. As time passed, the case grew colder. The public began to lose hope. And yet, the Zodiac's cryptic letters never stopped. As the years passed, the case faded into the annals of unsolved mysteries. Yet, in the shadows of the investigation, new clues began to surface. Clues that had never been seen before or were perhaps hidden in plain sight all along. These weren't just fragments of old letters or forgotten witness statements, but concrete pieces of evidence that threatened to tear the entire case wide open. What if the Zodiac had been closer to the victims than anyone realized? What if the true identity of the killer had been right under the nose of investigators, and no one had ever truly noticed? In 2020, a breakthrough came. A team of independent investigators using advanced encryption methods began working with old Zodiac letters and ciphers, including the infamous 340-character cipher. A chilling theory emerged. What if the Zodiac wasn't some mysterious, faceless monster stalking the streets, but someone whose identity had been meticulously hidden? What if the Zodiac had used his cryptic messages as a smokescreen to deflect suspicion from himself? And more importantly, what if his identity was now finally within reach? The key to the puzzle seemed to lie in the code, the ciphers. The Zodiac had sent many, boasting that they were unbreakable, daring the public and police to crack them. Some ciphers remained unsolved for decades, including the infamous 340-character cipher, which had puzzled experts for years. But when a team of cryptanalysts finally cracked the cipher in late 2020, the message it revealed was nothing short of shocking. For over half a century, the Zodiac ciphers had been the stuff of legend, with each piece of encrypted text serving as a puzzle for those who sought the truth. But in 2020, after decades of failed attempts, a group of amateur cryptographers finally broke the cipher wide open. The message hidden within the code revealed a chilling truth. The Zodiac had been hiding his true identity, weaving false clues and leading authorities on a wild goose chase. The decoded message didn't just contain more taunts or cryptic musings. contained something far more damning. Contained names, contained places, and it contained a disturbing hint at the Zodiac's true identity. A name that had been buried in the archives, right under the noses of investigators for decades. A name that had never been fully investigated. A name that now loomed large in the search for the killer. Arthur Leigh Allen. Allen had long been a suspect in the Zodiac case, but he had never been definitively linked to the murders. He was a disgruntled former convict, a man with a troubled past, and a suspect who had always slipped through the cracks of law enforcement's investigations. But the newly uncovered cipher, combined with fresh evidence from the investigation, seemed to point directly at him. His fingerprints, his handwriting, and even his presence at key locations near the crime scenes now stood out as more than coincidence. Arthur Leigh Allen had been on the radar of law enforcement almost from the beginning of the Zodiac investigation. A former school teacher and convicted child molester, Allen had a history of violent behavior and was known to frequent the areas where the Zodiac had struck. Despite the mounting circumstantial evidence, Allen had always denied any involvement in the killings, and investigators had never been able to find concrete proof linking him to the crimes. But with the recent breakthroughs in the investigation, new light was cast on his suspicious behavior. Allen had even been known to possess a similar type of watch to the one described by eyewitnesses who had seen the Zodiac at the crime scenes. He had also been seen in the area on the same nights that some of the murders had taken place. His movements and patterns began to align disturbingly with the Zodiac's timeline. Even more shocking, newly unearthed documents revealed that Allen had been a prime suspect in an earlier unsolved case. A case in which a young girl had disappeared under similar circumstances to the Zodiac's victims. This discovery tied Allen not only to the Zodiac case, but to a pattern of disturbing behavior that had gone unnoticed by authorities for years. But the most shocking revelation came when Claire, the lead investigator, uncovered a previously unseen letter from the Zodiac, one that had been sent years after the final confirmed murder in 1969. The letter had been buried in the archives, forgotten in the wake of so many other letters. This final letter, however, was unlike any of the others. It wasn't cryptic. It wasn't filled with riddles or taunts. It was blunt. It was chilling. And it was written in a way that finally revealed the killer's true motivations. The letter described the Zodiac's final victim, someone who had been close to him, someone he had tried to protect, but someone who had ultimately become a casualty in his twisted game. The killer revealed that this victim had been someone who had come too close to discovering the truth about him. They had been silenced forever, their disappearance covered up as just another victim in a long string of murders. The letter detailed the murder in graphic detail, describing it with a coldness that made Claire shudder. The investigation took a dark turn when Claire discovered the final missing piece, the identity of the Zodiac's accomplice. For years, it had been believed that the Zodiac had operated alone, a solitary figure in a deadly game of cat and mouse with the police. But as Claire dug deeper into Allen's past, she uncovered something far more sinister. Allen had not been acting alone. He had a partner, an accomplice whose identity had been hidden for decades. This accomplice, someone with close ties to the Zodiac, had helped cover up the murders, eliminating any trace of evidence that could point to Allen. The accomplice had been the key to the killer's ability to evade capture, and their involvement in the case was far more significant than anyone had realized. The search for the Zodiac Killer, now nearing its half-century mark, finally seemed to be coming to a close. But even as Claire and her team pieced together the final details of the case, a chilling truth lingered. The Zodiac may have been unmasked, but the shadow he cast over the world would never truly fade. The lives he took, the families he destroyed, and the secrets he left behind would haunt the world for generations to come. As the investigation into the Zodiac Killer reached its final stages, the realization hit Claire like a ton of bricks. The killer had left behind more than just a trail of blood. He had left behind a legacy, one of fear, manipulation, and darkness. The truth, once buried deep beneath layers of lies and deception, had finally come to light. But in the end, the most chilling part of the story wasn't the killer himself. It was the fact that he had gotten away with it for so long. The killer had been living in plain sight, hiding in the shadows, and no one had been able to see it. The Zodiac Killer was no longer a name whispered in fear. He was a man who had walked among them, hidden in plain sight for far too long. Never forget, even the most elusive criminals can hide in plain sight for years, manipulating evidence and deflecting suspicion through calculated actions. And the power of persistence in investigations, where even the smallest breakthrough, like cracking a cipher, can uncover long-buried truths and bring closure to decades-old mysteries. Want more chilling stories? Like, comment, and subscribe to dive deeper into the unknown as you help us shine a light on the shadows.